Okay, sometimes you get away with easy wins. Your opponent is not very strong, he makes mistakes, usually in the opening, and you just win the game very easily. And that's pretty much what happened in this game. I was black, the time control was 8 minutes with 4 seconds on each move, so you play d4, knight f6, e3, e6, knight f3, b6, and here comes the first mistake, bishop b5, and of course I could continue normally and completely ignore the bishop on b5, bishop b7, bishop b7, and so on. But instead of that I chose to play a6, and here we play bishop c4, and now after bishop b7 he went back to e2, so he's made 3 moves already with the same piece in the opening, which is just a terrible way to play. So I'll play c5, c3, d5, d takes e5, bishop takes c5, b4, bishop e7, b5. I don't care about that, so I'll play castles, bishop takes a6, knight takes a6, and here he's made a bunch of mistakes already, but now if the bishop takes a6, bishop takes a6, he can't even castle, so he played knight d4. Maybe with the idea to play knight to e2 and block this diagonal, but he didn't do that, so he played, after queen c8, he played a4. You might think that, okay, maybe he's planning to put his knight on b5, but of course he can't do that, because of the knight to b5, I would just take, and he can't take back, because then I would win his rook on a1. So I'll play rook d8, and he play queen b3. Now of course he can play knight to b5. I'll stop that with bishop c4. Now my bishop is sort of outside of this blockade, more or less, so he had to go back. Okay, he can't, maybe he could have taken this pawn over here, but it doesn't really give him anything. It's just a useless pawn, and everything is happening in the center. And well, of course, if queen takes b6, I could even play something like, I don't know, maybe bishop to c5, rook to b8, or something like that. But it doesn't really matter. It was a useless pawn. So queen b2 and now e5. I mean, everything is happening in center now. I don't care about losing a pawn, so I just gave that pawn up with the d4. I took back, and after, obviously he has to take with the knight, because if he takes with the pawn, well, then his king is just completely exposed. So he played knight takes d4, and after knight takes d4, queen g4. I'm threatening to win this pawn over here, and he can't castle either, because my bishop is still holding this diagonal, and I'm also threatening. You might not have seen my threat. I'm not only threatening to take the pawn, I'm also threatening to take the knight, as you will see. So he played rook g1, completely overlooking this, my main threat. I simply play rook takes d4, and you might wonder why. Well, first of all, he can't take with the queen, because I'm threatening checkmate over here. Remember this bishop over here? Okay. He can't take with the pawn, because of the pawn takes. Okay, let's take a look at that line. For example, pawn takes, bishop b4 check, and he can't move his king anywhere, so the only move is to well, okay, he can put, if he puts the knight over here, he's going to get checkmate over here. Remember that that's my main threat. I'm threatening all the time to checkmate him on e2. Same thing if bishop in between is still checkmate over here. So the only move is to take the bishop, obviously, but then that will lose as well. So you can't do that. So he played the only move after rook takes d4 is f3. Nothing else works. So I'll play queen h4 check, and after g3 it looks like I have to choose between losing my queen or my rook, but actually it's not as simple as that. I'll play bishop b4 check, and now he has to, well, if he goes to, let's say, king to f2, then I can just take over here. Maybe not. Okay, let's see here. Okay, then after queen, maybe queen h2 is not actually the right move. Then let's see here. Okay, maybe something like this. And he also has to take. And now I can if I check over here, he has to go back to the same square, and now queen f1 check. So let's take a look at that one more time. If king to f2, queen takes h2 check, bishop e1 check, king takes e1, queen h1, and well, of course, if he goes back, then it's going to be a checkmate right away. So he has to go back, and now queen f1 check, mate. That's correct. So he played knight c3, and just played bishop takes c3 check, queen takes c3, and after queen takes h2, he resigned, because if he takes over here, it's checkmate in a couple of moves, I suppose. Okay, maybe not actually checkmate, but I think it's kind of obvious that he's completely lost. He resigned anyway after queen takes h2, but let's just play with the thought. Not only have I won back the piece, but I have, well, actually I'm up a piece here. As you can see, he has one bishop and a rook against bishop, knight, and the rook, and his king is totally exposed, so it would be completely unnecessary to continue this game. So, okay, what else? Okay, if he puts something in between, for example, the knight, I can still take over here, and well, you know, it's completely over for white. So f3, g3, bishop b4 check, as we saw. Okay, if it takes over here, I can just take over here, and I'm threatening two things. I'm threatening to take, well, the main threat is checkmate, but I'm also threatening to take the rook with checkmate, actually, because if after queen takes g1 check, his king can't go anywhere, because my rook holds this file, my bishop holds this diagonal, and of course then the back rank checkmate. Okay, so he resigned after queen takes h2. Okay, I hope you enjoy this short game. I thought that it was an interesting game. Okay, he made a bunch of mistakes, but this is actually what happens if you're just making unnecessary moves. Just to show that one more time, after bishop b5, a6, bishop c4, bishop b7, bishop e2. I mean, what's all that about? I mean, bishop b5, bishop c4, bishop e2. You can't make moves like that and expect to get away with it. So that's what happens, and 24 moves later he resigned.